Hi, I'm Maxwell Birmingham.
And I'm Milo Sheridan, and we're
And yep, we're here talking about the Ethiopian Civil War. And one of the reasons we chose this is we had heard a lot about like the American Civil War throughout schooling, but the American Civil War was a war over law and slavery, and this is a war over actual like power struggle, and that intrigued us.
so just we want to have some background information. Is the main players of this civil war is the Ethiopian government, which is composed of the military and the citizens who back it, and then the enemy. Well, their enemy is the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, or the TPLF. They're composed of multiple rebel groups throughout the country, like the Oromo Liberation Army, and the motives and background of the motives of this is to kind of get us to understand this event is since 1994 Ethiopia set a federal system which ethnic groups control 10 different regions of the country. The TPLF was a very influential leading party, and they've been that since 1991 when they oust a military regime because of corruption, and their only goal was for power.
Right.
Under the coalition of Ethiopia, it became a prosperous and stable country where their economy grew and everything just became better. But concerns were raised by the amount of humanitarian rights and level of democracy that was in the country. And this led to protest, and the government was reshuffled and taken out, and multiple people were taken out and placed in. And we saw Mr. Abiy appointed prime minister. He liberalized the politics and set up a new party and accused the Tigrayan government of corruption and make sure their citizens don't have a right.
Right. And September 2019, Tigray defied the central government and held its own regional election, which obviously the central government said it was illegal. The government took away funding for Tigray and cut ties in October. This led to Tigray and now the TPLF to declare war. Uh, Everything tensed up and people got angry when the TPLF was accused of attacking an army base and stealing weapons. This led to Mr. Abiy saying that they had crossed the line and forced military confrontation.
Um, Major events of this war. That was like the start of the war. The first was in November 20th, November 2022 on the 3rd. The TPLF attacked had a surprise attack on a northern command of the government, and they said it was self-defense because they pushed into their land. And then, coupled on the 7th, Ethiopia Parliament voted to endorse the creation of an intermittent government for the northern Tigrayan to avoid civil war in the country. That was for the ones who didn't want to join the TPLF. And then on the 10th, the government seized part of Tigray, and including the airport, which was a major outpost. And then at the end of the month, civilians on the 27th, 20th, civilians have been massacred on both sides, and they both blamed each other. And then later, Ethiopia on December 2nd, Ethiopia and the UN signed a deal which humanitarian access is federally controlled to the people on the land which the federal government had, and this helped about 6 million people. Now, that was in 2020 until now. There's been many small conflicts, but majority of the battle has been with starvation as they're blocking off supply routes. And
Yeah. So who's been winning? As of November 3rd, 2022, the Ethiopian government has officially won. Throughout the war, everyone thought that they were just going to be tied, locked in a stalemate forever, but that's been overturned. And this is sort of the part where we just talk about ideologies we've learned in class and tie them back into the conflict. There's authoritarianism and patriotism. With patriotism, there are uh, obviously big ties for both Tigray and uh, Ethiopia, the central government, where both sides are trying to rile up their civilians by saying that the other side is evil and needs to be exterminated, which will only push the conflict further.
Uh, and then authoritarianism is been seen by each side. The civilians have to choose a side, and they have to back it, like because you can't in this war. It's a civil war. You can't be in the middle. You have to be on one side or other. And they've given up their rights of they've given up their rights for whoever they're backing, and they follow whatever they want because they back themselves to one and they can't really go to the other or else they'll be killed.
Right. Scale of the conflict. One thing that's really interesting that nobody really talks about is that the scale of the fighting in Ethiopia rivals the Ukraine war that's currently ongoing. Um, Both wars started around similar times, although Ethiopia war has been going on longer and has actually seen more death. Um, Things that have happened. The UN has sent out ambassadors to uh, try to like talk out peace agreements. Um, and they've said that 500,000 people have died as a result of the war in Ethiopia. Many places are deeply concerned by the amount of potential further mass atrocities that this war may commit. Diplomats of both sides together have had secret meetings outside of Ethiopia, which led to 5 months of a humanitarian ceasefire, which was very good for everybody. And the ceasefire provided chances with both sides to rearm each other for another round of fighting, which is sort of the downside of that. Um, there's been a lot of casualty rates. There's been somewhere between 380,000 and 600,000 civilian lives that have been lost by lack of food, water, and healthcare. Around 300,000 and 900 90,000 civilian lives have been killed by direct attacks from the military groups themselves. Um, at most, the fighters, only about 5,600 on both sides have been killed, and like 3,000 wounded on each side, which is horrifying to hear because more civilians have actually been killed than the fighters themselves. Worrying more, even, is that 56,000 have been displaced to Sudan, and it's still been counting.
After all this, peace talks have started on November 2nd, 2022, and this led to there's ceasefire after 10 days of peace talks by the African Union, and a deal came on a day before the second anniversary of the war, where which was signed by Gethra Reda and the senior leader of Tigray People's Liberation Front, and Redwan Hussein, Mr. Hobby's national security advisors in Petri, Africa, and and negotiations cautioned negotiations have caused forces inside and outside to be worried because anything could derail this whole entire process, and the U.S. and UN say that the backdrop of the ethnic cleansing and widespread abuse will hinder the situation to help.
Okay, and just really quickly, what we believe should happen for peace talks, since they've already been happening, is people just need to clear up and get rid of everything that they're feeling about the conflict, because that has to be stopped first before peace talks can continue. And for the future looks of the peace treaties, they will need help and humanitarian aid from other countries. But if anything goes wrong, it'll inevitably start the war over again, and both sides can't maintain that.
And I would just like to add that hopefully that this future of peace talks can happen, and that will help save many millions of lives. And thank you for being here and listening to our lovely podcast on the Ethiopian Civil War, which is not lovely at all. It's very...
Yes, thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.